Hey, what's up? I'm Jason Howell, and I'm here with the Acer Iconia Tab A700. You get 32 gigs of storage for $449.99. We'll go ahead and round it up to $450. It's a 1.3 gigahertz quad-core Tegra 3 processor with 1 gig of RAM, 32 gigs of internal storage, 1920 by 1200 LED backlit display, has a micro SD card slot that accepts up to 64 gigs of storage, micro HDMI with Dolby Mobile 3 technology, left and right stereo speakers, a 1 megapixel front-facing camera, a 5 megapixel rear-facing camera, there's a rotation lock switch on the top, and finally, this is a Wi-Fi only device, shipping with ice cream sandwich. All right, so first of all, the design. It's not the lightest or thinnest tablet you've ever seen, but it's sufficient. It's rounded on the long sides, as you can see here, and flat on the short sides, which is kind of at odds at how you are likely to hold the tablet, which is in landscape mode. So you get the less comfortable side jutting into the palm of your hands most of the time. It has a rubberized textured back, which kind of reminds me a little bit of the Nexus 7, but for some reason the Nexus 7 feels more premium. This has a flatter feel to it and just kind of feels a little bit less expensive. Otherwise, nothing too astounding about the design. It really has a pretty mediocre and kind of already dated look and feel to it design-wise. All right, now let's take a look at the display, which is really a key differentiator for this tablet. It's very similar spec-wise to the Asus Transformer Pad Infinity, minus the IPS Plus display, which means it's maybe a little bit less bright in outdoor situations. But aside from that, viewing angles are excellent, and just the pixel density on this tablet is very impressive. My eyes are kind of spoiled at this point. For a 10-inch tablet, I require this kind of resolution. Now, the front-facing camera is a 1 megapixel camera. It's exactly what you'd kind of expect out of a 1 megapixel camera. It's sufficient for video conferencing. Still has a little bit of a blurriness to it, but it'll probably be fine for your video calls. Now, the 5 megapixel rear-facing camera up here with Acer's kind of signature square camera hardware approach is fine in a pinch. Highlight situations, as per usual in this class of tablet, take pretty decent pictures. Low light to mid light, you're going to see a lot of grain in those pictures, and it was just okay. I actually thought the HD video that it records looks pretty decent, again, in outside situations. Indoors, things looked a little bit grainier, but overall, I was more impressed with the video than I was the pictures on the tablet. All right, now let's take a look at the performance of the tablet. You know, just jumping around through the OS, I would notice different things like skipping and lagging when I'm pulling up the multitasking bar. Didn't happen every time, but it definitely did as I was using more apps throughout the experience. And that's something that, you know, on similar spec tablets, I wouldn't see as much of. Browsing the web was okay with the built-in browser. Once I installed Chrome onto the tablet, I kind of found a noticeable difference there. Gaming performance, played Dead Trigger, played Real Racing 2, and throughout both of those games, I definitely noticed times where things would kind of slow down and frames would start skipping, and it was kind of a noticeable degradation of the experience. I'd have to say, all things considered, I expected better performance out of it and got that out of other tablets with similar specs, so I was a little disappointed in that. Now onto the battery. This is sporting a 9800 milliamp hour battery, and it's bulky enough to power that extra resolution in the display, which is what a lot of it's being thrown to. I was able to get through 12, 14-hour days of moderate use with the tablet before plugging it in, and definitely if I left it unplugged overnight, I didn't really have to worry about losing a lot by it being unplugged all night. And the next morning, the battery is still pretty, staying pretty strong. So I'd say the battery is actually one of the stronger points of this tablet. Now onto the software. It is running Ice Cream Sandwich, and thankfully, Acer hasn't done a whole lot to kind of sully that experience. They have added in a few potentially useful features. This little ring launcher down at the bottom with a green dot that you just cannot unsee once you see it. It's there persistently. Is kind of a launcher to a few things that you can kind of program in here, as well as control your volume and launch a few apps. It's pretty handy, although sometimes it doesn't respond as quickly as you'd like. Down here in the bottom corner in the notification tab, you have a few toggle switches, it's like they crammed them all in there. It's a little ugly and unsightly to look at, but overall it's very useful to have that. And then of course if I turn it off and then turn it back on again, you'll see that the lock screen has a few different shortcuts that you can do as well. Now, one thing that I totally noticed on this repeatedly, and it got very frustrating over time, you could see it a little bit when I was touching the lock screen there, is that the touch screen responsiveness on this tablet is really low. It was actually very annoying. There were many times where I was typing on the on-screen keyboard and it was missing keys even though I was pressing very solidly with my fingers, swiping where it wouldn't catch the swipe, just operating different apps where the touch, you could definitely tell that the experience was being degraded by the fact that the touch screen wasn't capturing every touch that you were doing. And that gets really annoying over even a short period of time. So having said all that with the Acer Iconia Tab A700, let's take a look at the pros of the device. The display is sharp and impressive looking, and the battery performs adequately considering what you've got going on underneath hardware-wise. Now the cons. It's laggy, especially considering its quad-core Tegra 3 innards. The touchscreen responsiveness is very poor. The camera produces less than stellar photos, and its design just feels dated. Overall, the Acer Iconia Tab A700 goes up against some pretty stiff competition in the Asus Transformer Pad Infinity. And for $50 more for the Asus tablet, I would probably recommend that you just spend that and get that tablet. All across the board, it's just better in many different ways over the Acer tablet here. So I would recommend that you not buy the Acer Iconia Tab A700. You can catch my reviews on All About Android at twit.tv/AAA. And thank you so much for checking out my review of the Acer Iconia Tab A700.